Jahnay Bryan is a Cornell grad who was reported missing the same week as Hannah Kobayashi, but she's received far less public attention. I'll share what we know so hopefully she too can be located. We'll also share the story of the badass indigenous woman who led a rebellion against the Spanish colonizers in 18th century Southern California. This and more missing persons and paranormal tales on the Haunted Hollywood Hour podcast. Welcome back. This is Haunted Hollywood Hour with Tanya Dixon.
Hello, everybody.
And me, Carly Heath, and birds.
And birds. We have our birds back.
Yeah, our birds decided to just start talking while we started talking. Thank you for contributing to the atmosphere of this podcast.
Yeah, you know, they were quiet before you got here and we started.
Yeah.
They haven't twerped a peep.
It's good luck.
Yeah.
And we do have some missing person updates that I want to share with you all. Hannah Kobayashi has been found.
Incredible.
And since we covered the indigenous history of LA last week, I thought I'd share some nearly forgotten history of an indigenous leader who attempted to lead a rebellion at the San Gabriel mission. It's another really important story that you don't learn about in school because this is the kind of history that doesn't encourage us to be nice little obedient servants to capitalism. But let's talk about Hannah Kobayashi first.
That was a happy ending that we were hoping for, but a surprising ending, right?
I'm so glad that she's safe. This is the outcome that we all were hoping for.
Yeah.
She's been found, she's made contact with her family, and she's safe after spending nearly a month in Mexico. Here's the statement from the family. We are incredibly relieved and grateful that Hannah has been found safe. Her family confirmed this on Wednesday. This past month has been an unimaginable ordeal for our family, and we kindly ask for privacy as we take the time to heal and process everything we've been through. We want to express our heartfelt thanks to everyone who supported us during this difficult time. Your kindness and concern have meant the world to us.
But it puts another spin on why did her dad commit suicide 10 days after she disappeared?
Oh, God.
That's just
really hard to get into anyone's mind.
True.
And there's so much information that we don't know.
Yeah.
And, the family's probably going to start getting like a lot of backlash, and Hannah is. We don't know if there's mental health issues. We don't know if there's other personal issues or legal issues that are extremely complicated.
Or people that she is involved with. We still don't know. Who was she found with? Who stole her identity, allegedly? There's a lot of question marks.
Yeah, I just kind of am leaning towards the okay, internet, can we all just kind of leave her alone now?
Yeah, I think that is the best.
We got the outcome that we were so invested in this case because we were so worried about her, and it was a nightmare situation that we could all easily believe. And now it's over. Yes, we are not going to know every single detail about what happened, whether it was a manic episode, whether it was whatever. But even just while she was missing, there were some really nasty people being really nasty to the family. And there are situations where that sort of thing is warranted, but let's just be happy that she's found.
Yeah. And show some grace and let the family have their privacy and let them do the next move, if any move, that they want to do without it being a public forum.
And I do have a situation that I think, though, is worthy of the internet being judgmental. So this is some really dark information that has come out about Thomas Manizak, the man I talked about last week who is missing after 25 years. This is information that was not shared by the sister when she put up the GoFundMe and has collected over $11,000 for this guy. This guy, Tommy, is a child molester.
What?
In 1993, he was arrested and convicted of lewd and lascivious acts and oral copulation with a child under 14. And the details of this case are horrific, so major trigger warning. I think it's worth saying, though, because the sister of the victim in this case did a story for LassenNews.com because she's like, people need to know about this guy. And
That's the sister that said that?
the sister of the victim.
A sister of the victim.
So there's two sisters that I'm gonna talk about. The sister of Tommy, who is major judgment in my eyes is going her direction. And then the sister of Tommy's victim, whose sister was just 7 years old when he abused her. And she said the molestation went on for about 2 years in the early 1990s when her family lived in the Sierra Lodge, which is an apartment motel complex in Greenville, California, until a neighbor overheard Tommy and the victim together. As soon as the mother in this case heard, she called the cops, she called the crisis line and spent the entire night on the crisis line. They had to talk her down because, of course, any decent parent who finds out about what's happening to their child is going to go for blood. And she had the mother had no idea that this was going on. She was in a relationship with Tommy. And
wait, the mother?
The mother of this 7-year-old was in a relationship with Tommy Mann. And then she was actually pregnant at the time
from him,
with his child. So the victim's half-brother is Tommy's child. So there was no trial. Tommy pleaded guilty and spent 18 months in prison. 18 months.
Not long.
And Tommy's sister, Marcella Nasiri, who put up this GoFundMe after Tommy was located after being missing for 25 years, has collected over $11,000 without letting people know that they are donating money to a child molester.
And the sister knows everything.
The sister knows everything, has known everything from the beginning. All that money should go to the victim.
Absolutely. 100%.
Because the victim is still dealing with the repercussions of being molested for 2 years when she was 7 years old.
Wow.
And
well, wait a minute.
Here's
question.
Yeah.
So once they figured out who it is, did the authorities get involved at all? Because he doesn't have his memory, right? He doesn't remember any of this?
We don't know. He can't talk.
Oh, that's right. He can't talk.
We don't know what his memory is doing.
Gotcha. Okay.
But he was supposed to be registering as a sex offender.
Sure, yeah.
And he had been, back early in the day from 1993 till he disappeared. He was registering as a sex offender. But then he went missing. And for the last 25 years, he hasn't been registering anywhere. He's been free and loose, and God knows how many children he's been molesting
say that.
while out doing whatever.
Right.
And I'm just going to read a quote from Tommy the molester's sister. She says, "What he did in the 1990s was sickening and horrible. But at the end of the day, he's still my brother. And I'm not turning my back on my flesh and blood. I love him, and I've been looking for him for 25 years. All the other stuff is outside noise. He's my brother, and I love him." She's always thought of herself as his protector. And when I read that, I wanted to throw my laptop across the room.
I want to vomit. First of all this blood and flesh and blah, blah, blah with family. I mean...
I don't care if you're married to him. I don't care if he's your blood. I don't care. He does that to kids.
Yeah.
He's not your problem anymore. He's the state's problem.
He's the state, absolutely. And her loyalty to him is misguided because, I don't know, I don't stand by people. No. I don't care who you are.
Maybe he can be rehabilitated. That's not your problem. That's the state's problem.
Yeah. And but to call what did happen white noise, that's a next level of fuck up. You don't say that.
Women like this, you're the problem. I know the patriarchy is to blame for women who do this. Like the wives who defend their creepy ass husbands who are being creepy to girls and teenagers, and the people who are related to these creepy ass dudes. Like, you have been brainwashed by the patriarchy to be like a protector and to be like, oh, he's just a little baby. He doesn't know what he's doing. Yes, he does. He is a manipulative piece of shit.
Well, I think there's also individualism because I have been in a situation myself that I don't want to go into, but when it came down to flesh and blood, it wasn't about that. It was about what happened. So I think if you're a person of integrity, morals, and grace, that you won't say what she said. So a lot of times it gets down to, I mean, I was brought up in the same situation in America that she was, but I would never do that. You would never, you know what I mean? So
We've seen people.
But we see people that are, I don't know if they're stupid or they just have no moral character. That's a lack of moral character.
I think there's a certain amount of brainwashing that makes women do
Some
that.
women. Some women.
Some women do that, yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
it's just like, I was thinking, the mother, I don't have children, you don't have children. But I can certainly have empathy for, extreme empathy and an understanding of a kid's trauma when their mother has to have a man in their life and they have children, they get a divorce, they split up with the dad, and then they bring in how many boyfriends that's going to be, you know, daddy of de jour. I think that's sick. You got to put your children first, and you're getting pregnant to this guy who's not their dad. It's like she put that man who ended up being a pedophile ahead of her children, and I think it's sick.
Well, the mother did, you know, she was the one who called the cops. She was the one who, you know, who once she found out what was going on,
she did leave him.
She left him. She called the cops. She did everything right.
But you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of cases, yes,
that you and I know about where that does not happen. And these creepy ass dudes, and I don't care if it happened yesterday or if it happened in the 1990s. If a creepy ass dude who you are related to or you're married to did creepy ass things, like, it's your responsibility to wake up and be like, you know what? I know that happened like 40 years ago, but actually that was really fucked up. And
it's still fucked up.
It's still fucked up.
And it is not white noise. That particular quote really rubs me wrong.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's victim blaming. It's
victim
like
blaming.
We have to put the man on the pedestal no matter what, because he's just a little baby.
Yeah. Well, I think, too, there's some women that's happened with. And I'll tell you, I was just reading about another woman that killed her children. It was going to be a murder-suicide, and I don't even know what year it happened. And the husband ended up leaving her, but still defends her to this day in her mental health. Men do it too with these fucked up. There's a lot of women that maybe it is postpartum. I don't know how those hormones work, but the fact that you let it get to the point that you know, there's many cases of women doing that, harming their children, killing their children. And these men stand by them too.
Yeah.
They may divorce them, but they're like, she just wasn't in her right mind. It's bad on both sides of the fence. And I think it's just fucked up people.
Yeah.
There's some fucked up people.
Yeah. There's a point where it's the state's problem.
Yeah.
And for Tommy, it's the state's problem. And all that money, I hope if you are someone who donated to the GoFundMe, oh God, I should take the GoFundMe down from, because I put a link to the GoFundMe on the podcast.
Oh.
God,
Don't donate.
Don't donate. I'm going to take that down. And if you donated, make sure you get your money back.
Yeah.
Because no donations to child molesters.
And that whole GoFundMe should be taken down by GoFundMe.
I know. Exactly. But since so much attention has been on the Hannah Kobayashi case, I thought I'd briefly touch on some other cases that have flown under the radar because, as happens a lot, you know, Black women and indigenous women often go missing. And they don't get any attention to their case at all. And Jahnay Bryan is one of those cases who went missing around the same time as Hannah Kobayashi. She hasn't been found yet. She was last seen in Los Angeles on October 16th and was reported missing on November 13th because there was a lot of confusion about whether she was missing. She wasn't staying in touch with a lot of people, her friends and family. So it wasn't really clear if she was just being quiet or actually missing. And her mother in this case is not helping at all.
How old is she?
So she's 23. She went missing October 16th. She was reported missing on November 13th. An ebony alert was issued on November 19th, which the LAPD hasn't explained why it took them 6 days to issue the ebony alert. Jahnay is a recent graduate from Cornell. She graduated last year in 2023. And by the way, all this information comes from an LA Times story about the case. And I'll link that in the show notes. After graduating, she moved back home with her mother in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. And according to her sister, Jaquay, so there's two sisters. Jaquay is the sister who is looking for her. And then Jahnay is the sister who is missing. In the year leading up to her disappearance, so throughout 2024, Jahnay cut off all communication with her friends and the rest of her family. And Jaquay was worried. She had the police actually do a wellness check at her mother's home in April. And the wellness check confirmed that the mother and Jahnay were both still living there. And Jaquay has said that her mother has not been talking to her and is not involved in the search for Jahnay.
And not a peep on media. I've never heard of this, and I watch and listen to news all the time.
So there does seem to be some tension between the sister who's looking for Jahnay and the mother. Like, that's been going on for like a while. In August, Jahnay sent an email to her ex-boyfriend telling him that she was moving out of Pennsylvania and to a new city. The ex-boyfriend shared that message with Jaquay, and it's a weird message. And this is coming from a Cornell student who, higher education. And this is from Dateline. She wrote, "Gone for the last few months. Back," the email read, "moving to a new city Monday. Bye." Very
cryptic.
Yeah. And then on October 16th, Jaquay says Jahnay's ex-boyfriend received another email. And it said, birds are chiming in.
Yep.
It said, "I think we should get married and I think we should work in industry. I was just in contact with the commissioner of the Department of Water Management in a city and it's a brilliant idea." And Jaquay's like, this isn't even grammatically correct. Definitely made her go, okay, what's happening here? Because it made her think, like, did someone else access her email and send this?
Yeah, it's similar to that with Hannah.
Yeah. Dateline reached out to Jahnay's ex-boyfriend who confirmed that, yes, the emails were received on those dates. So we know that Jaquay is telling the truth. And that October 16th was Jahnay's last known communication. Jahnay's friends finally started to begin posting about her disappearance last month in November. And her friends all started visiting the West 6th Street, Westlake neighborhood. This is kind of by MacArthur Park, where Jahnay was last reported living. And the neighbors there confirmed seeing her and described her. And some additional deets are, we keep meeting people that say, oh, I saw her at this bus stop, or I saw her in the area. The random people that we find say, yeah, we saw her. And Jahnay's Outlook email indicated that she was on Pacific time, which is another sign that she was in California. Then she was officially, because they couldn't find her, she was officially reported missing on November 13th.
Now, what about where she was living by MacArthur Park? Did they?
Yeah, that's where they were looking at. That was the area.
That was the area.
And so she's a Black 23-year-old, 5'7", and 125 pounds. If anyone has any information on her whereabouts, contact Detective Avalos in the LAPD Missing Persons Unit at 213-996-1800 or leave an anonymous tip at 1-800-222-8477. The Black and Missing Foundation also has an anonymous tip line on their website, and I will leave a link to that in the show notes. And I thought I'd bring you a little preview of what I'm going to cover next week. This is a book I'm reading called The Tujunga Canyon Contacts, which is about a UFO abduction that happened in Tujunga Canyon in the 1950s.
Wow.
1953.
Ooh, I can't wait to hear about that.
I can't really find much information about it online, so I bought this out of print book, and I want to describe this book for you all. It is
well used.
It is very 1980s. It has a lot of pink and blue graphics on the front cover with embossed lettering. That
the
says,
old embossed gold lettering.
Yeah, the Tujunga Canyon Contacts. It's very dramatic. And the pages are very brown, and the text is so small. I don't know if people in the 80s had better eyesight.
I don't know.
But the text is really, really small.
Wow, that's interesting. And especially, I'll be curious to hear how that goes, since I got excited and, I text you, I saw a UFO, and then it was SpaceX.
Yeah, that was
rocket launch.
That was your creepy story this week. You were so excited that you thought you saw a UFO, and that was like, no, I saw the same thing. That was a rocket launch.
It looked like a UFO. It was like, or a star, but then I took a picture and there was some like green lights coming off of it that you couldn't see with the naked eye. So I'm like, this is definitely a UFO. And then it just sat there and stared at us with this gold trail behind it, and then went bing and just went out. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, that is such a UFO.
Yeah.
And then
no.
Carly texts me back and said, no, it's a rocket launch.
But the Tujunga Canyon abduction is so interesting, and it's one of those ones that like hasn't gotten talked about as much as
I've
it
never
should,
heard of it.
because the people who were abducted were lesbians in the 1950s.
What?
So it's 1950s lesbians.
That's
yeah.
cuckoo.
Well, you know, in the 1960s, there was that famous abduction story of the Hills, who were an interracial couple.
Yes.
You know that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was already a little bit scandalous.
Yeah.
And so 1950s just wasn't prepared to go all out about the lesbians being abducted.
Right. Queer abduction.
Yeah.
Abduction.
But it's got everything. I mean, it's got some like possible indigenous connections.
Wow.
Like there's a little bit like of that vibe. There's dogs and cats. There's
They better be taking good care of the dogs and cats.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's living in a cottage in Tujunga Canyon, out in the middle of nowhere. So it's got hypnosis. It's got all the
checks
things.
all the boxes.
So I'm gonna look forward to telling you that whole story.
And you couldn't find much on the internet. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder. The internet is everything,
I
as y'all know.
It gives, a real brief overview of it, but like I want
deets.
to tell you the story, of it.
Okay, well, that'd
and
be
so
very
that's why I have to read this. How many pages is this book? And there's drawings.
tiny print. She's not joking.
Yeah, there's drawings and everything. It's like 330 pages, this book.
Wow.
And I'm going to find a way to tell it to you in like 30 or 40 minutes.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, so I want to share with you guys some validation from strangers on the internet. We got our first ever review on Apple Podcasts from a stranger, a person that we don't know, named Gross Flowers. That's her screen name. And they gave us a 5-star review that says, amazing. And they write, came for the Hannah update, but the oral indigenous history was so good. That was my favorite. Hoping to hear more. I felt like I was with friends for an hour.
Oh, thank you. That's lovely.
You guys, please leave us another review. Maybe we'll have 2 reviews.
2 would be lovely. We'll accept that. But that's very nice. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And keep on subscribing to us and stuff. I think we have like 32 subscribers.
So we're growing.
We're like a little classroom right now.
Yeah. We are a classroom right now.
Yeah. And so we're bringing you a little lesson every week, but maybe eventually we'll get as big as my other podcast.
Exactly. Dare to dream.
Yeah.
And also keep sending us, if you haven't, story ideas and things you're curious about. Like, we want to talk about that. We want to talk about what you want to talk about.
Yeah. And you can email us at hauntedhollywoodhour@gmail.com. And you can also DM us on our Instagram, which is Haunted Hollywood Hour Podcast, all one word. So since you guys like the indigenous history, I thought I'd share a little bit more about that, especially focusing on a powerful woman who is a rebel and who has an amazing life story. I also want to I'll start off with the briefest, because I can't find much information about her, but I want to give the briefest bit of information about someone named Narcissa Higuera, who was the last fluent speaker of the Tongva language. And she was born in 1852, and this is a photo of her taken in 1905. She looks like a very dignified woman. And very
strong.
Yeah.
She has a strength about her.
Yeah, she has her hair tied back and probably a braid or a ponytail or a bun. And she's wearing, the classic early 1900s bodice and dress with like a bow tied around her collar. And she lived around the Fort Tejon area near Bakersfield and recorded the Tongva language and Tongva songs for a guy named C. Hart Merriam. And she died in 1912 at 201 20th Street in Bakersfield. And I looked that up on Google Maps, and it appears to be a Salvation Army warehouse now.
Wow.
And it's just a really
yucky area.
Yucky, industrial, like a mechanic shop on one side, and it's such a shame to think of the going from the natural beauty of this area to just
putting up crap. Or tearing down history,
machinery,
as we talked about. I hate the tear down of history.
She's buried at Union Cemetery in Bakersfield, and her plot is at the Haven of Rest section, block 260, lot 6, if anyone wants to visit her. She had 4 children, so she likely has some great grandchildren maybe around today. And I did a little searching, and I saw at least one of her grandchildren fought in World War I and World War II, which is actually kind of really sad to think about. You go from like indigenous people who are
already
living your life, and then their grandchildren are fighting to defend. Well, World War I is the stupidest war that shouldn't have happened in the first place. And they're fighting to defend an empire that...
After fighting to defend their land.
Yeah.
Which is never discussed as it should.
Yeah.
And then to go into American wars after this land was taken.
From them.
That's horrible.
Yeah. And it was just, when you think about these grandchildren probably don't even know their history.
They might not.
And it makes you think about, like, I don't know if you've ever done a 23andMe or anything.
I haven't, but I want to.
But, like, I have a great grandparent who is 100% West African.
Really?
And I'm like, what was their history like? And I don't, where did they come from? What part of Africa
I want to do that.
I've
always wanted to do that.
And then I also have, Native American ancestry, but like all white people have like a little bit of, a little bit of a lot of things. It's like, what were those people? What was their life like? Anyway, it's heavy stuff to think about, but we should think about it. And I also was just randomly searching other info about the Tongva religion, and I found out that they use Jimson weed as like a spiritual plant medicine. Do you know what Jimson weed is?
I've heard of it, but I've never smelled it or seen it.
It's a really pretty big white flower that you sometimes see like on the side of the highway. It can grow without water, really, and it's
my kind of plant.
Yeah, it's very poisonous. You're told like not to let your horses eat it.
Okay.
But it can also be used, I'm guessing, for a psychedelic sort of situation. But it was part of their spiritual practice. And so that was really interesting reading about it. And I also found out that porpoises were a part of their pantheon of deities, and they were said to watch the world. They were supposed to swim around the world and watch over it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love a good marine mammal protection story.
Every time I dive into like more research, I'm like, this is really interesting. So I'm going to tell you about this revolutionary woman named Toypurina. And the information I got for this came from PBS SoCal, a story called Toypurina, a legend etched in the landscape of Los Angeles, and theshapeofamother.com/Toypurina, and girlboss.com, their blog article on Toypurina history. You may have seen a mural depicting this woman around Los Angeles. Have you seen this woman at all?
I have.
Yeah.
I have seen that.
She's very pretty. She just looks like a very strong indigenous woman.
Yes.
With long black hair parted in the middle, and she's wearing like a necklace of beads and stones and earrings.
It's a great mural. There's some really cool artwork behind the image of her as well.
Yeah, and the artwork behind her is very colorful, full of kind of Aztec imagery and Native American imagery. And that is Toypurina. And she was born in 1760. And by the age of 24, she was a medicine woman, a linguist, an educator, and a respected leader in her community who eventually would plan a rebellion in 1785 against the Spanish colonizers in California. And this is the type of thing that she dealt with growing up in her childhood. In 1771, when she was just 11, a Spanish soldier stationed at the Mission San Gabriel, sexually assaulted a chief's wife. And when the chief tried to kill the soldier, the chief ended up getting shot by who? Probably other soldiers, and killed, and his head was set on a pole as a warning against any other attacks on soldiers.
So that's been going on so long, that kind of, I didn't know it went on to this point.
Yeah.
Because you think 1400s, 1500s, you expect that, but wow.
Yeah. So soldiers also introduced venereal diseases that spread amongst those people who they newly converted into the mission. So their newest little cult members to Christianity, they were like, we're going to reward you by raping you and giving you venereal diseases. On the outside, so people who resisted the cult, basically. They were even less safe. Soldiers went out on patrols and would deliberately find Native women and assault them. And any time a Native man tried to intervene, they faced the same fate, which was getting shot, getting your head chopped off, and put on a pole. Between the 16th, and they're like, why are you guys such barbarians?
Yeah.
All we're trying to do is rape random women, and you're trying to stop us? I don't understand. So between the 16th and 19th century, Spanish missions had the goal of replacing indigenous religions with Christianity. They changed the indigenous culture. They replaced everything with European traditions. And one example is marriage. Many indigenous people were polygamous, so missionaries would have a husband bring in his many wives to the church. And you're like, wait, I thought they were a matriarchal society. Why are they polygamous? And it's like, you have to understand different cultures like have different forms of marriage. And like, why does polygamy always get a bad rap? I wouldn't want like a whole husband. Like maybe a sixth of a husband.
No, I ain't sharing mine with another woman or another man, as the case may be.
But like, imagine you buy shares of a husband and you're like, then you have a yearly shareholder meeting and you're like, is he performing in the way that we need him to perform? What changes need to be made to this husband? And then you hold a vote. I'm just saying there are other ways of doing marriage that could possibly work for different types of people.
Yeah, and
maybe
that's
not
cool.
for you.
Yeah.
Maybe not for you.
I say whatever makes somebody happy as long as it's not hurting somebody else.
Yeah.
I have no judgment. I'm an Aquarius. We don't judge.
Timeshare husband. It's like you don't want to like own a house because you have to like take care of it and everything. But like you timeshare, you go visit the house like once a year and you're like, we had a good time. See ya. See you next year.
Yeah, that I'm sure there's a lot of people that like you that would work for, but that would drive me straight to a therapist. There is no way I would be living like that. But
do you want a husband around all the freaking time?
Yeah, I mean when we're at work or whatever. No, but yeah,
it's just a lot of work. I'm just saying. So the indigenous people,
options.
they had different ways of doing things, and it worked for them, But the church is like, you all must be either men or women. We can't have any of that non-binary business. And then they were like, since you guys have like all these different diverse ways of doing marriage, we need you to conform to just the way the church does it, which is one man, one woman, which is what they're still trying to do today. Mm-hmm. And so they would have the husband bring in their many wives, and they had each wife state her reason for being the one true wife. And the friars then decided who was the wife and then would marry him, like officially
a contest
under God or whatever. And with each generation of natives, there was a gradual shift in what they ate, what they wore, how their economy worked. And the younger generation the Spanish were like, we need this younger generation. We need to brainwash them the most, right? So that you see this today in the Christianity, the youth ministry. You're like, we got to get the youth in there. We got to make sure that the youth aren't reading those books that teach them about other things that are different than what we want to teach them, right? So they were all about educating the native youth and separating them from their families and placing them in the Christian-based schooling systems. And the missionaries made them start living in adobe-style houses. And, before the natives were nomads. They moved around. They followed the animals. Their domed houses. Mm-hmm. They could move those around really easily. But now they're like, nope, you have to stay in one place. You have to raise and domesticate animals. You have to make them farmed animals. You have to grow plants. And of course, having animals in a small space, diseases start happening, and a lot of native people died off from the diseases from raising animals in close spaces, as is happening now with avian influenza. So the natives, all their wonderful native clothes and beads and feathers and all of that, gone. They're wearing boring European style clothing, and they're speaking Spanish. They really
took their language away.
Yeah, wiping out that native language, which is sad.
That's really sad.
And now there's a Facebook group called if you go to facebook.com/Tongva language, there is a community.
That's great.
But it's like you're learning a few words at a time. You're missing all the nuances of what, the thousands of years of that language developing. And
fortunately, that is what happens when people want to take history away
and
make it their own. You can't make it your own. You have to own what happened because it happened.
Yeah.
That's happened with a few languages, quite a few. They disappear through time, and, people are okay with that.
Yeah. So because the Spanish forced people to raise livestock instead of the harmonious, hunter-gatherer moving around lifestyle, there's increasing competition for resources. This is capitalism that they're introducing here. It's all about scarcity mindset. And it's like you got to work in order to earn your food. And it's a really stressful new way of life. And when Toypurina was just 14 years old, this was around 1774, she watched as 850 native people from the Los Angeles region were lured or forced into the rigid control of this cult, the San Gabriel Mission, where they were, and I'm using finger quotes here.
She's doing bunny ears.
Civilized, stripped of their culture, language, traditions, and diverse sexuality. In 1782, the Spanish governor ordered soldiers inside the missions to prohibit the baptized indigenous people from having any dances in their villages. Here's the thing. Their dances were a really, really important part of their culture. In the fall, during Libra season, they traditionally held their annual mourning ceremony, which was a culmination of a series of death rituals that included these dances. And through these dances, they believed that the souls of the deceased achieved their release from earth and then entered the land of the dead. But by the end of October 1785, folks were worried that, hey, by banning these dances, our dead relatives aren't able to go on into the afterlife. And they're really anxious about this. And they're really starting to get irritated with the Spanish mission's oppression of their culture and their language and their labor and their sex life.
Their whole life.
Yeah, their whole life. Toypurina calls a meeting of all the unbaptized indigenous people in the area. All these people who are like, nah, we're going to say no to the cult. We're just going to do our own thing over here. And she's like, you guys, we need to do a revolt. They can't do their dances. We're out here getting raped by soldiers and we can't protect ourselves or else people will get their heads on poles. We got to do something. And so they plan an attack and they get their armed men with bows and arrows to creep over into the mission one night. And unfortunately, some bootlicking rat betrays them by telling the mission guards.
From their tribe?
Yeah. One of the indigenous people. I don't know if it's on the inside or the outside, but some little bootlicker tells the guards.
Wow.
Just like that McDonald's worker who's like, that's Luigi. Some bootlicking rat. And
is it Luigi?
Oh, yeah, that's the other thing. Is it Luigi? I don't know. Different eyebrows.
Yes.
Different eyebrows. I mean, although as an Italian, I know when I pluck my eyebrows, they grow back.
As a Scottish, I don't have that problem.
They grow back in like 30 seconds, which is unfortunate. But
we digress. Back to the story.
But this bootlicking rat tells the guards, and Toypurina and her participants and her ringleaders, they're all captured. And Spanish officials sentence 5 of the attack's participants to 25 lashes. The punishments are carried out in public, of course, as a warning to all the others. And Toypurina and several others are put on trial. And when questioned about the attack, she responds in a statement that became famous and recorded in this guy named Thomas Workman Temple's article. And the title of the article is Toypurina the Witch and the Indian Uprising at San Gabriel.
That's a good title.
She was known as a witch for years because, that's what they do to women who rise up and want to
and know challenge. A few herbs.
I know, right?
Can make toothpaste out of a plant,
So Toypurina, the so-called witch, says this. She says, I hate the Padres and all of you for living here on my native soil, for trespassing upon the land of my forefathers and despoiling our tribal domains. I came to the mission to inspire the dirty cowards to fight and not to quail at the sight of Spanish sticks that spit fire and death, nor to retch at the evil smell of gun smoke. And be done with you white invaders, like a badass. And
she survived that speech.
Yeah. And
That's pretty incredible considering the time and who she was dealing with. To say those words and to survive that?
There's some things that happen. Wait till you see. You know, the patriarchy. That's going to be like the subheading of this. Fist raised, the patriarchy. But, you know, for centuries afterwards, Toypurina is depicted as a treacherous witch or a seductive sorceress. She's regarded still as one of the most influential Native women as far as the men being mad at her. So Spanish officials convicted her and the 3 men of leading the attack. The 3 men were held in a prison, which is called a presidio, in San Diego. And Toypurina was held at the prison in San Gabriel while they awaited word of their punishment. In June of 1788, nearly 3 years later, their sentences arrived from Mexico City, and Toypurina was banished from Mission San Gabriel and sent to the most distant Spanish mission. And according to trial records, Toypurina was coerced into being baptized in 1787 while held at the mission. And 2 years after her baptism, which was in 1789, the same year as the French Revolution, by the way, she married a Spanish soldier named Manuel Montero.
Ironic.
Do you think that she suddenly fell in love with the Spanish soldier?
I do not.
I don't think this was a marriage that was something that she consented to.
It's definitely questionable because she sounds like such an intelligent and independent woman.
But if it's kind of like, we will kill you or we will keep on raping you until you know, all these men, all these soldiers, like I'm sure maybe she was the victim of repeated gang rapes. Maybe she was tortured in terrible ways. And they're like, how about you marry this guy and then you can get out of this. Yeah. She's like, fine.
Yeah.
And she's
self-preservation.
Yeah. And so they lived in Monterrey and they had 3 children together. And that's just fucking depressing. Yeah. But like, you know, she probably has
absolutely, yeah, she probably has.
You know, makes you wonder, like, you know, who are her descendants? That's
are any of you related to her? Let us know.
I know. I'm sure there's some Ancestry.com, 23andMe possibilities there.
Yeah.
But I'm sure she did not have a good life in Monterey. I just can't imagine that going well for her.
Did they have a picture? Did you find a picture of her husband? I'd love to know what he looked like.
I don't think there are any pictures of any of these folks because this was in the 1700s and everything was done in paintings. And it's like...
Oh, that's true.
Could you afford to have an artist paint? And an artist isn't going to paint a criminal, which Toypurina is a criminal.
Right, that is true.
And then, like, they're not going to paint some random Spanish soldier.
Yeah.
Paintings are kind of reserved for.
I was just curious, like, I wonder if he's like way older than her.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of May December.
But I'm sure, like, in the retelling of the story for many, many years, it was like a Pocahontas, you know, John Smith sort of thing. Oh, they fell in love. Right. I don't think they fell in love. On May 22nd, 1799, this happens to be the same year that the French Revolution ended, Toypurina died at Mission San Juan Bautista in Alta, California. She was only 39 years old.
What? No. 39?
And they said she died of sickness. And I'm like, what kind of sickness? Extensive venereal diseases from these creepy-ass Spanish soldier motherfuckers?
And that means she popped 3 kids out because she didn't get married, it sounds like, till later in her life.
Yeah, so...
The kids must have been fairly young when she died.
Yeah. Toypurina became a symbol to Californians and other Americans of the Gabrielino, which is, by the way, Gabrielino is like one of the many words for this population of people. That's the Spanish word, but they go by Tongva, which was kind of a word that was come out of the word Tongvanar, which is like the word for the land. And then there's also Kich, which I think is a word that comes from the houses that they lived in. So 3 different words, but this is a symbol of the resistance of those people to the missions. She's a central figure among California Native women who protested against Spanish colonization. After Toypurina's death, Native American women formed a religious political movement that awarded power and influence to female deities and entrusted women with maintaining the health and well-being of their communities. In 2014, the play Toypurina, which was a play about her life, premiered at the San Gabriel Mission Playhouse. And here's some places where you can see Toypurina in art. There's 2 Toypurina murals in El Monte on either side of the city. And there's a 60 by 20 foot mural in Boyle Heights on the main wall of Ramona Gardens, which is a public housing complex, which is historically home to Latino families. And at the Baldwin Park Metrolink station, that's by LA artist Judy Baca. And it's a big work of art called Danza Indigenous. 1993 was when it was made, and it features a replica of a place of prayer that's a tribute to Toypurina.
And there's been no films about her.
There should be films about her.
Let's do it.
There should be books about her.
There
right?
absolutely should be.
Right?
I'm surprised.
We should be learning about her in elementary school, not Christopher Columbus, that piece of shit.
There's a lot of stories like that I've learned that we should be
We know the
about.
Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Marina, but we don't know the names of the indigenous people who lived here.
That is a tragedy for sure. Yeah. Well, and I have to wonder, would people read the book? Would people see the film? I think they would.
If it was we got to make good film happen, you know. Yeah. Taika Waititi.
Hello.
This sounds like a Taika Waititi film, doesn't it?
Could you get on that and also cast me?
Make a movie about Toypurina.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's a great idea, because we know you're listening.
Yeah. Or make like a happy story, like a happy TV series about a woman inspired by her who actually maybe does succeed in killing the Spanish.
Yeah.
And then is like, okay, we're gonna keep the Spanish off this area, and like let's do a happy indigenous story.
A happy indigenous story,
like an alternate history.
Because all the stories are very difficult pill to swallow and heartbreaking for those of us that care.
Yeah.
I did see a screening of the Jodie Foster show, limited. What's it called?
True Detective.
Yeah. Did you see that?
Yeah, I've seen a few episodes of it. Yeah. I haven't finished it yet.
I saw only a couple, but I know it is about indigenous families.
Well, and speaking of Taika Waititi, you do know Reservation Dogs is.
I always forget that. I forget about that. I've only seen a little bit of that. Never seen all of it.
So we're going to watch Reservation Dogs before next week.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to.
And is there anything that you're looking forward to?
Oh, still with Mrs. Claus.
Yeah.
We actually, that's going to be the reason for the season for me till the end of Christmas. We sometimes would get bookings in New Year's Eve, because the Russian community has Santa come out on New Year's Eve, which is kind of interesting. But so we've got a theater show by the Jubilee Theater Company, and they're doing 3 nights, December 11th through 13th at Taxco Theater, and it's a Hanukkah and Christmas play set in the 1940s. Sounds really amazing. Really, it's an original show by playwright April Wish, who I know through the storytelling community, and we have a friend in it, Pam Wynn, and it's a whole lot of children. So we will be Santa and Mrs. Clausing it for them Friday night on Friday the 13th.
Oh, good. Yay.
That puts a light on Friday the 13th, which I like Friday the 13th. I think that's a good day.
Yeah. We'll have to see what happens on that day, astrologically.
What do you got? Oh.
I was like just thinking about the astrology of that. It is kind of a dicey astrology time, actually.
Is it?
It's the end of Mercury retrograde. So when Mercury retrograde comes to an end, there's always a little hiccups, little challenges. Yeah.
What about you? What do you got going on? What are you looking forward to?
I guess I am still looking more and more forward to award season. I've been spending a little bit of time looking at outfits and thinking about what I'm going to wear.
That's okay. That's
which is totally vain, but also holding the dichotomy of understanding that capitalism must be destroyed, but we can also take advantage of opportunities to look really good and sexy.
I say look really good and
the
sexy.
The best revolutionaries are the sexiest revolutionaries, which we're seeing.
And revenge is always a good look when you're feeling pretty.
Yeah. And
I am actually really looking forward to award season. It's just a fun time. It's, like a national holiday here in Los Angeles. The Oscars, isn't that a national holiday?
Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah,
and
fun.
But speaking of revolutionaries, I got to write a really great profile on Jane Fonda.
Oh,
so that's coming out in the next magazine, and that is I think it's a banger. I think I'm like, oh, this is like one of the best things I've ever written.
Exciting. Okay, that she's speaking of the SAG After magazine. If you guys can get your hands on that, Carly's got all kinds of amazing articles, and she's a wordsmith.
I really enjoyed learning everything that there was to know about Jane Fonda and then writing about her, because I think she's a badass.
She was on the picket line with Lily Tomlin,
she was great.
and she was wonderful. Were you out there when they were there at Netflix?
No, I wasn't actually there.
It was really fun. It was really a good day. And they spoke to all of us and just were lovely, the both of them.
Yeah.
What a great bestie story between the two of them, because they really support each other, and they're saying funny things and the other one just picks up on it. They're a good yin and yang girl friendship. I loved watching them together and play off each other.
Yeah.
They were really cool.
And at the SAG Awards, when Jane Fonda receives her Life Achievement Award, she's going to give a banger speech.
Oh yeah. That'll be one for the books.
Yeah.
So you got to have a pretty dress for that.
Yeah.
I want to go to the SAG Awards, but
maybe someday it'll work out. Yeah.
Yep.
Alrighty. I think that's it for today. Next week, I'm going to tell you guys about lesbians getting abducted into Hunga.
It's like, you never know what's going to pop up over here.
Until next time. Bye.